The rain hammered against the windows of our Seattle home, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. For 20 years, Alaric, a 46-year-old software engineer, had built a life with my wife, Bront. We had a comfortable existence, a beautiful house overlooking Puget Sound, and two wonderful teenage children, Gideon and Isolde, or so I thought. Lately, Braun had been distant, working late at her job as a marketing director, attending conferences out of state, and generally acting different. I chalked it up to stress. The marketing world was brutal, but a nagging feeling persisted, a cold dread that whispered of something more sinister. It started subtly. Braun, usually meticulous about her appearance, began dressing with a newfound flair. New clothes, expensive perfumes, and an almost desperate need to hit the gym. She'd always been attractive, but this felt performative. Then there were the phone calls, whispered conversations in the hallway, hushed tones that ceased abruptly when I entered the room. I'd ask who was calling, and she'd brush it off, just work or a friend from college. But her eyes wouldn't meet mine. One evening, Bront claimed she had to attend a last-minute conference in Portland. "It's crucial, Alaric," she said, her voice tight. "I have to be there." I offered to drive her to the airport, but she refused, saying a colleague was picking her up. Something about her demeanor felt off, a forced casualness that didn't quite ring true. That night I couldn't sleep. The feeling of unease gnawed at me, a persistent itch I couldn't scratch. I tossed and turned, my mind racing, replaying the past few months, searching for clues I might have missed. Finally, around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep. I went downstairs to the kitchen, hoping a glass of milk would calm my nerves. As I reached for the carton, I noticed Bront's laptop sitting on the kitchen counter. She never left her laptop downstairs. It was always locked away in her home office. Curiosity, or perhaps a darker impulse, overwhelmed me. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't resist. I opened the laptop. It wasn't password protected. A wave of guilt washed over me, quickly followed by a surge of adrenaline. I clicked on her email icon. The inbox was open, and there it was. An email from someone named Kester with the subject line, "Can't wait to see you." My heart pounded in my chest as I opened the email. It was a series of explicit, suggestive messages detailing a passionate affair that had been going on for months. Kester, it turned out, was a colleague of Bront's, a younger, more attractive man she'd met at a conference in San Francisco. The emails painted a picture of stolen moments, secret rendezvous, and a level of intimacy that shattered my world. I scrolled through the messages, my stomach churning, my hands shaking. Each word was a dagger twisting deeper into my soul. I read about their plans for the Portland conference, a romantic weekend getaway disguised as a business trip. The room spun. I felt like I was going to be sick. 20 years. 20 years of love, trust, and commitment, all reduced to this sordid little affair. I stumbled back from the laptop, knocking over a chair in my daze. The sound echoed through the silent house. I couldn't breathe. I sank to the floor, clutching my chest, the pain unbearable. It felt like my heart was breaking, shattering into a million pieces. I spent the rest of the night in a haze of shock and disbelief. I couldn't cry, couldn't scream, couldn't even think straight. I just sat there numb, staring blankly at the wall, the emails replaying in my mind like a broken record. As dawn broke, I knew I couldn't stay in that house any longer. I needed to get away, to clear my head, to figure out what to do. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and left a note for the kids, telling them I had to go out of town for a few days. I didn't mention Bront, didn't mention the emails, didn't mention the devastation that had consumed me. I just left. I drove aimlessly for hours, eventually ending up in a small coastal town north of Seattle. I checked into a motel, a dingy, anonymous place that suited my mood perfectly. I spent the next few days wandering along the beach, watching the waves crash against the shore, the endless rhythm a stark contrast to the chaos within me. I replayed every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I had missed, for clues that could have warned me. Had I been blind? Had I been too trusting? Had I been a fool? The questions haunted me, relentless and unforgiving. I thought about confronting Bront, about screaming at her, about demanding answers, but the thought exhausted me. What was the point? The damage was done, the trust was broken, the love was gone. When I finally returned home, Bront was there waiting for me. She looked tired, her eyes red-rimmed, her face etched with worry. "Alaric, where have you been?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The kids were worried sick." I looked at the woman I had loved for half my life, and felt nothing but coldness. "I know," I said, my voice flat. "I know about Kester. I read your emails." Her face paled. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I can explain," she finally stammered, her eyes darting around the room. "There's nothing to explain," I said, cutting her off. "It's over, Braunt. I want a divorce." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. She started to cry, begging me to forgive her, to give her another chance. She said it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that she still loved me, but I didn't believe her. The trust was gone, irretrievably shattered. "I'm sorry, Braunt," I said, turning away. "It's too late. The divorce was messy, as divorces often are. Braunt fought me every step of the way, trying to get as much as she could. She claimed I was being unreasonable, that I was overreacting. She even tried to blame me, saying I had been distant and emotionally unavailable. But I stood my ground. I refused to be manipulated or gaslit. I had evidence, concrete proof of her infidelity, and I wasn't afraid to use it. The kids were devastated. Gideon, our son, sided with me, disgusted by his mother's betrayal. Isolde, our daughter, was more sympathetic to Braunt, blaming me for pushing her away. It was a difficult time, filled with anger, resentment, and heartbreak. But I knew I had to stay strong, for myself and for my children. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, I learned more about Braunt's affair with Kester. It turned out he was married as well, with 2 young children of his own. His wife, Eloan, was completely unaware of the affair. I wrestled with the decision of whether to tell her. On the one hand, I didn't want to get involved in their mess. On the other hand, I knew what it felt like to be betrayed, to be kept in the dark. I couldn't stand the thought of Eloan living a lie, blissfully unaware of her husband's infidelity. After much deliberation, I decided to reach out to her. I sent her an anonymous email providing her with evidence of the affair, copies of the emails, photos from their conference in Portland. I didn't reveal my identity, didn't offer any advice, just presented the facts and left her to draw her own conclusions. A few weeks later, I received a response. It was from Eloan. She thanked me for telling her the truth, said she had confronted Kester and filed for divorce. She was devastated, heartbroken, but also grateful to be free of the lies and deceit. We exchanged a few more emails, offering each other support and understanding. We had both been victims of betrayal, and we found solace in sharing our experiences. The divorce was finally finalized. Braunt got a settlement, but not as much as she had hoped for. Kester's wife left him, taking their children with her. They were both alone, their lives in ruins, the consequences of their actions catching up to them. I didn't feel any satisfaction, no sense of triumph, just a profound sadness, a deep sense of loss. The woman I had loved was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. I focused on rebuilding my life, on healing my wounds, on being a good father to my children. I threw myself into my work, spent time with friends, and started exploring new hobbies. It wasn't easy. There were days when the pain was overwhelming, when the memories haunted me. But I refused to let Braunt's betrayal define me. I was stronger than that. I was a survivor. One day, a few years after the divorce, I received a call from Braunt. Her voice was weak, almost unrecognizable. She said she was sick, seriously ill. She had been diagnosed with cancer, and it was spreading rapidly. She wanted to see me, to apologize, to ask for forgiveness. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to refuse, to hang up the phone and never speak to her again. But another part of me, a more compassionate part, knew that I couldn't. She was dying. She deserved closure. I went to see her in the hospital. She was frail and weak, her once vibrant face pale and gaunt. She looked like a shadow of her former self. We talked for hours about the past, about the present, about the future. She apologized for her betrayal, for the pain she had caused me and our children. She said she regretted her actions, that she had made a terrible mistake. I listened, my heart aching with a mixture of sadness and pity. I forgave her, not for her sake but for mine. I needed to let go of the anger, the resentment, the bitterness that had consumed me for so long. Forgiving her was the only way to truly move on, to find peace. Braunt passed away a few weeks later. I attended her funeral, along with our children and a few close friends. It was a somber occasion, a reminder of the fragility of life, the importance of love and forgiveness. As I stood there watching her coffin being lowered into the ground, I felt a sense of closure, a sense of acceptance. The pain was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. I had survived. I had healed. I had found my way back to happiness. Life is unpredictable, full of unexpected twists and turns. We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we react. We can choose to be victims, or we can choose to be survivors. I chose to be a survivor. I chose to forgive. I chose to love again. And in the end, that's all that really matters.